I will teach you the ways of the dark side.
Shall I provide you with a droid escort?
My dear General, there's nothing you have that I could want.
It is over, sister.
No one remains. This is all my fault. No! Wait! You can't leave me here!
What's up, MetaNerdz? We're finally getting to Ventress. This is going to be the canon version. Hopefully I get to the Legends version soon, but this is pulling from every canon source available. Books, games, movies, comics, shows, everything. The most important are going to be these two. I highly recommend, I think it's one of the best canon books, is Dark Disciple. She has one of the most interesting and unique stories in all of Star Wars, as she's an apprentice to an apprentice, being under Dooku while he's under Darth Sidious, while also having these ties to the Nightsisters, the witches of Dathomir that use the Force in a way unlike anyone else, as it's a sort of magic. If you want to better understand them, check out our complete life of Mother Talzin. But throughout Ventress' story, you're going to see it is just betrayal after betrayal. She was given up as a child and does develop fatherly affection toward her captive, and then he was killed by a Jedi, then the Jedi was killed by criminals, and to avenge him, she started to fight every criminal on this planet. And there's the obvious betrayal of Dooku, but what's really dark is that even Mother Talzin uses her. You'll see that it's very convenient that at the same time Maul resurfaces and that she knows that Sidious and Dooku are going to eventually try and snuff her out, as Mother Talzin is a unique threat to Sidious's empire. Right when all that's kicking off, Ventress reappears. She takes up this role as a loving and caring clan mother, when really she just wants to use Ventress as a weapon, just like everyone else throughout her entire life. So let's jump in, and remember, the best ways to help me out are to hit that like button. YouTube's making that more important than ever. Comment any thoughts you had and suggestions for future videos, and subscribe so you don't miss this series. But let's start the complete life of Ventress. In 50 BBY, Asajj Ventress was born under a hazy red sky on the outer rim world of Dathomir, located in the outer rim at grid coordinates 06. This planet was so unique that it once attracted the Zepho, the ancient, powerful, and now lost race that once manipulated the Force in ways unlike any other. They are the ones that built these enormous structures, and they also built these fortresses on Perida. There are even inscriptions here written in the Ur-Katat script, which is also just called the Sith language and means old tongue. As you can tell, this goes back far older than the Sith Order, and the manipulation of the Force by the Zepho is the most likely cause for this green magic called Ichor, which is created by that same Force that Jedi and Sith can call on. At least in this galaxy, Dathomir is unique in that it is a natural wellspring of this, caused by what was described as the Zepho leaving behind a shadow in the dark side. It was on this magic steep world that Ventress took her first breaths, with her father likely drawn through a selection process similar to the one we'll see Ventress herself carry out later on. Think of their society as split like ancient Sparta, but split down the sexes, with the Nightsisters all in the ruling class and their Night Brothers being the Helots. A pool of workers that was constantly terrorized into submission. Instead of the superior tech in the forms of armor and spears, it was their esoteric knowledge on how to wield the Ichor. The Night Mother made sure to carry on the traditions that established this order, but sometimes the threats came from off-worlders. Being in the Outer Rim, they were exposed to countless petty crime lords. But if the crime lord actually had some firepower behind them, the Night Mother would have to strike a deal. Something similar happened before when a young Darth Sidious approached her, with promises of them working together to share their secrets in their respective dark arts. Maul was given to the Dark Lord as a gift, a show of goodwill between them, but their relationship quickly soured, and she would forever hold a grudge against the Sith. And now, when the powerful Sinatine pirate Hal'Sted came to make his deal, it was the infant Ventress that was given up. With a heavy heart, her biological mother complied with their clan mother. We will see this theme pop up again later in our story, but be on the lookout for how all are subjugated to the will of the Night Mother. Though she often speaks in terms of sisterhood, everything we see her do is to serve her own goals, to ensure the power of her coven. Ventress was taken to the western reaches of the Outer Rim, to the planet Rattatak. Despite her fear and confusion, she grew fond of Hal'Sted due to what appeared to be true fatherly affection for this adoptive daughter. Yet behind this facade, his focus was always on molding her into a potent weapon, knowing a feared Night Sister would ensure his petty kingdom never failed. The planet Rattatak was perpetually plagued by relentless assaults from marauding Weequay pirates. As a young girl of just 6 in 44 BBY, Ventress was hit by another tragic loss. During this latest battle, Hal'Sted, the only protector she could remember, was abruptly killed, leaving her defenseless amidst the chaos. As she knelt beside her adoptive father's lifeless form, grief enveloping her, a new figure emerged, Ky Narec, a Jedi Knight who found himself marooned on this war-torn world. Narec was determined to put an end to the ravaging pirate factions, a personal war that put him at odds with his superiors in the Jedi Order, and in this way his character is a lot like Qui-Gon Jinn. When a weak-way pirate lunged at Narec, instinctively a surge of raw, untamed force power emanated from Ventress, hurling the attacker away with such ferocity that he sailed over multiple buildings. Recognizing the immense potential in this young girl, Narec offered to take her on as his Jedi Padawan. Here we see the start of 2 issues in Ventress's psyche. She would later learn that Narec was the one that killed Hal'Sted, the only father she had ever known. It was not some warring pirate out of that mob. And the second issue is that Narec would often express the shortcomings of the Jedi Order. It was always held back by traditions and Republic laws that made it so hard to do what you knew was right. They were so out of touch with the people of the Outer Rim. And this is why Narec chose a specific and tangible lifelong goal of simply saving this one planet, even if no one on Coruscant had even heard of it. His laments are very similar to Qui-Gon Jinn and Dooku, who had been railing against the corruption and incompetence of the Order and the Republic for decades. While Dooku was plotting with Sifo Dyas and the senator from Naboo, the next 2 decades of Ventress's life, up into her late 20s, was spent becoming a beacon of hope for the downtrodden on Rattatak, the only form of law enforcement these people would ever see, using a single green blade just like her master. Living in the light side of the Force, she was at peace at the side of Ky Narec, until one fateful day her world was shattered again, for the 3rd time in her young life. Another one of these countless pirate battles erupted, but this time a sharpshooter finally eliminated this pesky Jedi threat. He took a bolt that could have hit her, and he collapsed into her arms and was dead before she could even lay him down. Instead of being consumed with grief, she was set ablaze with anger. Calling her master's blade to her hand, she would use the Force to leap to the sniper's position and bring death down with a dual blade style for the first time. It is in part because of individuals like Ventress that we see so much confusion by lay people in the galaxy far, far away. Most don't know the difference between Jedi and Sith. People think that they're the same thing, and ironically at a very deep level there is a lot of truth there. But in this case, Ventress became the Banshee of Rattatak, a demon with unstoppable fury, but who wielded not red blades but the bright emerald green sabers of Jedi. To those who got in her way, there was no confusing her with the peace-loving monks of Coruscant. She was alone with nothing but her own ruminating thoughts. But it wasn't long before she was joined by another voice in her head, the whispers of the dark side, reminding her of how the Jedi Order had abandoned Rattatak and thus her master. That this whole galaxy was as ruthless as the weak-way pirates. And did she not notice how powerful she felt when she had slain that sniper? The strength she had when she wielded the Force and let herself feel the anger over all these losses. From her mother to Hal'Sted and Ky. Let their memory be fuel for the righteous flame that burns away the petty tyrants of this world. The following years would see her go on a killing streak, no longer a Jedi Padawan or Knight, though also not a Sith. This Dark Knight would slaughter most of the crime lords on Rattatak. Many of their underlings offered their loyalty to her, in this underworld driven by survival of the fittest, and she had a multi-continent empire under her command when she finally learned who it was that killed her master. The nefarious Valak warlord Osika Kurske had launched the attack that fateful day. And perhaps playing on how eager she was for revenge, the Valak was able to lead her into a trap. Another immediate, dramatic life change, as just moments later she was hauled off to the gladiatorial pits, with the electric bite of a stun collar ensuring her compliance. It was the year 23 BBY, and the 27-year-old Dathomirian was radiating a dark side aura when Count Dooku arrived. His last 20 years had seen him betray his closest Jedi friends and fully submit himself to the dark side under his master Darth Sidious. Always 2 there are, one to embody the power and one to crave it. But over the centuries, there always seemed to be secret, hidden apprentices, seen with Tenebrous, Sidious himself, who had an eye on the boy believed to be the Chosen One, and Dooku knew that if he was to adhere to the oldest of Sith traditions and one day kill his master, he would need to find a Force-sensitive adept of his own. Let me just mention somebody that know the Legend stuff, you might be seeing some visuals that are from Legends material, but that's because what I'm saying is coming from canon details. A lot of the major details, names, stories, and events like that were brought into canon. It's just that maybe not the whole legend story has been brought back, but that's why I felt like the visuals were good to go over what I'm saying. As he watched the fighting, he saw Ventress dominate using the Force alone as her weapon. This was the perfect candidate. To build an alliance with Ventress, he quickly cut down Kurske, freeing her and giving the Dathomiri the chance to join him on the ultimate quest for power. When he shared his history with the Jedi and the coming crusade against the Republic, she immediately saw the similarities to her old master. And as if to prove the superiority of the dark side, the Sith was alive while her master was killed by a lowly thug. Convinced that the dark side of the Force was the path to security, the ultimate protection against this random and uncaring existence, she voraciously devoured the secrets of the ancient Sith. Using relics once kept away from a young Dooku in the Jedi Temple archives, now he led her through them. And also, as one of the greatest swordsmen in the Order, Dooku was adding technique to her bestial rage. He bestowed upon her a set of uniquely curved lightsabers. These weapons held a dark history of their own, wielded by Dooku's previous apprentice. The next year would see Dooku testing her ability in the field. Once she was captured and bound above a molten metal cauldron, but she is able to call on the Force to regain her sabers and escape. She would train with the future leadership of the CIS, understanding how each and every unit would operate, as well as studying the leaked blueprints of Republic vessels. And toward the end of this year, her master entrusted her with a personal mission. The Count's sister had been kidnapped, and through a lengthy period that showcased her detective skills, just like when hunting down the warlords on Rattatak, she eventually finds that Jenza was kidnapped by Glut, who was himself hired by Raz Felodrone. Just as Glut was spilling the bantha beans, a blaster bolt cut him off, and she would learn that Raz was a Republic intelligence agent, the shadowy CIA of the Senate that got results with no questions asked. And all their intel pointed to Dooku taking the Separatists from just a dangerous movement to a military opponent in a galactic war. When she captured Raz, Dooku is proud and gives her the order to kill the agent, but then he turns cold and says to kill Jenza next. Ventress was deeply torn by this. She hesitates, whispers, "I'm sorry," before pressing the saber to Jenza's body and activating it. As she watched the life fade from the eyes of Dooku's sister, a part of her was terrified at what she had gotten herself into. Had she fallen for another trap, maybe one with more power and promise, but was she a captured animal once again, simply seen as a weapon for her master? Dooku had actually used his sister to leak what she thought to be correct information, his way of tricking the Republic agents. Raz had tortured her for days to get this intel, and so they believed it was accurate, and this would keep the intelligence agencies working useless leads for years. In 22 BBY, the decades of tension finally exploded on Geonosis. In these first weeks of fighting, she would successfully lead several battalions into combat and achieve a shocking victory over Jedi Master Thulm. She so outmaneuvered the Jedi that she stripped him of his lightsaber and forced his submission. But in her rage, she snapped and killed him, delivering his saber as a grim present to Dooku. But the Count was furious that she disobeyed his orders to take Thulm alive. She would carry out a string of war crimes that even early in this war earned her an infamous, almost mythical status in the voice of clones trading rumors in their barracks. One of the most frustrating truths of this war was that so many planets finally had bargaining power. Having the option to align with the CIS or Republic created situations like the tense meeting on Cato Nimordia. After a bombing of a civilian center, Obi-Wan was sent to help them investigate. But Dooku planted seeds that the Republic may manipulate the Nimordians and frame the CIS. So they accepted Ventress as the CIS representative to work the case alongside Kenobi. She would secretly plant evidence at the bombing site to try and make it look like these were caused by Republic military weapons, while working alongside Kenobi to keep an eye on his progress. She also worked on some of the younger Nimordian guards to twist them against the Republic and Jedi. After planting evidence on Kenobi's datapad, her proof seemed irrefutable, but Kenobi escaped in a shootout with authorities that were trying to arrest him. She helps the Nimordians track the Jedi down, and he is finally captured, all while she was still pushing the Royal Guard Ketor Nor to bomb his own people and radicalize them against the Republic. After a brief trial, Kenobi is found guilty, but to make sure that they hate the Jedi, she chokes the guards escorting him, and they of course think it's Kenobi doing it. They aren't killed, but almost all are certain now that the Jedi and Republic are evil. The guard Ketar is even further radicalized by this, and with a comlink connecting him to Ventress, she is the literal voice in his head, talking him into bombing his own people, transforming Cato Nimordia into a vigorous supporter of the CIS. When Skywalker arrived to help exonerate his master, he was accompanied by the Jedi initiate Mil Alabeth. Ventress knew that Dooku was immensely interested in Skywalker, but quickly found out just how passionate of a fighter this young man was. When the would-be bomber Ketar was stopped, the Nimordians realized that it was Ventress who was manipulating the youth in this entire scenario, not Kenobi. The Jedi's question to Ventress shows that she had internalized all of the abuse of her masters. as she was fine with using this troubled youth as a mere weapon to carry out her goals and corrupt the young Zabrak Jedi Initiate, cutting off the pursuit by firing on their location with her Genevex-class Fanblade starfighter. Alabeth is caught in a force pull, but Kenobi tosses his blade to damage the ship and forces Ventress to flee. Though this ended up being a series of failures, and Cato Neimoidia remained a powerful ally to the core, she was entrusted with a crucial mission to build an alliance with the Hutts. Hutt space was one of the rare independent areas that neither Republic or CIS hoped to engage militarily, but the Hutts seemed certain to stay out of this war and just make credits. Sidious and Dooku came up with the idea to manipulate Jabba via his love for his son, Rotta. Part of this would require bringing the war to the Outer Rim and close to Hutt space, by making the Republic look desperate to gain access to the Hutt's hyper routes, crucial for keeping supplies and reinforcements delivered to key battles far from the core. They would frame the Republic as the ones to capture Rotta in a bid to force the Hutts to comply with them. The first part of this would be to draw the Republic to Christophsis. General Worm Loathsome would lead the ground forces, while the renowned Admiral Trench led the ships out in space enforcing the blockade. By sweeping through civilian centers causing massive casualties, it drew the likes of Bail Organa and aid workers, who were eventually trapped, forcing a brazen mission led by Skywalker that did take out Trench's flagship. But by now, Ventress had grown to excel in manipulating young men with every skill under her belt. With a combination of seduction, force mind tricks, and playing on genuine resentment in the clone trooper Sergeant Slick, this man would forsake his brothers for the promise of riches and liberation from his Camino enslavers. With Slick leaking data, the Separatists could craft the war on Christophsis to further trap the Republic in this quagmire, where defeat always seemed to be snatched from the jaws of victory. Intuiting that something was off here, clones captured the head of tactical droid TJ-55, and poking around in his droid mind, they confirmed that there was a spy. All the while, Slick had been planting explosives throughout his base, and when Cody and Rex expose him, they are set off as the traitor tried to escape. Meanwhile, Ventress had drawn Kenobi and Anakin into a battle just to waste their time, theatrically revealing herself, getting in a clash of sabers just to feign a forfeit, and drop them through a damaged floor, using these few seconds reprieve to escape out a window and onto the bulbous head of a massive Octoptara tri-droid. Behind her, the Jedi can see the true scale of this larger wave of droid forces in this ever-escalating conflict. Unswayed, they move to slash the droid's legs, and the trio tumble to the surface, Jedi escaping via speeder while Ventress leaps to safety. Now she would carry out the most bold aspect of this plan, flying to Tatooine and swooping down on a sail barge with the tentacled Trident-class assault ship, whisking the young Hutt away in a brazen alien abduction just miles from Jabba's palace. And it was from one Ba'omar monk monastery to another, setting up operations on Teth. Jabba's bounty hunters were the first to track her down, but their heads were sent back to their employer. When General Loathsome was captured by Kenobi and the Republic had taken control of Christophsis, they were able to act on intel gained by ARF troopers. By covering the platforms with anti-air weapons, the Republic had to rely on ATTEs to make the climb up the sheer cliff wall. And when they took the top, she had 4A7 come out to greet them. His mission was really to draw them deeper into the labyrinthine structure. Once they find Rotta, their frame job was complete when Anakin, whose own mother was sold by Gardula the Hutt, and most humans on Tatooine just hated the Hutts in general, you could see his disdain for this child as the Jedi pair stuffed the son into a backpack. Dooku was on Tatooine and immediately showed this to Jabba, who in his outrage promised allegiance if his son could be rescued. Ventress slips off to join the CIS counterforce, hoping to corner the Jedi in their monastery. Ventress slashes through the main door controls, and in a short battle it appears as if most of the clones were killed, but a surge in the force alerted her to a bolt fired by a body slumped in the corner. The clone was CT-7567 Rex, and she was quick to force choke him into submission, using a mind trick to try and have him lure Anakin back. Rex was an unusual clone in many ways, with skills and intelligence more on par with a CC, a clone commander like Cody, but there were many other intangibles that Anakin was quick to pick up on in their time together. Through great strength, he is able to defy her control just enough to be informal in his call, using the General's first name, and this tips the Jedi off that he must be captured.
Anakin, come in.
Anakin?
We've held the droid, sir.
That's not like Rex.
What is your location?
Her droids alert her to Republic forces that just arrive, and feeling the pressure, she races wildly into the dark halls to cut them off before they can escape. R2 locks another blast door, but she carves through it in seconds. Dwarf spider droids are barraging their platform from below, and by the time Ventress gets through, she just finds Anakin's pet, the Padawan Ahsoka Tano. This fight is excellent in showing just how much of a natural fighter Tano was. Keeping up with Ventress, even for this amount of time, is impressive, but if you look close, you can see Ventress's mastery of the dual saber style. bashing the green blade with both, then just keeping one lock to the side so she can sweep at Tano's head. Anakin swoops in on Cancel to end the fight just as the platform gave way from the DSD-1 fire. When Obi-Wan interrupts to say that Dooku was calling, her anger bursts and she sends it flying over the edge. When she does call back, he is clear that failure will be judged not just by him, but by his master.
I understand, Master. I will double my efforts.
I hope so. For your sake.
Moments later, she hears Kenobi approaching. She draws him deeper into the darkness of the monastery, but his verbal jabs provoke her to pounce. His saber form was mostly Form 3, also known as Soresu, or the Way of the Minok, and it was actually developed to repel heavy blaster fire, but ends up being great for swiftly reacting to a pair of blades coming at you. Sensing that her dual blade style was ineffective, she uses a feature that makes her sabers one of the most unique of all time. There was great talk among the Old Republic era Sith, all the way down to the martial philosophy of Maul, on how double-bladed lightsabers had an advantage in both intimidation, but also at a practical level gave you unique angles that if you didn't specifically train against could be really jarring to keep up with. This vector of attack idea is why Dooku's curved saber had similar advantages, by Ventress being able to connect them, moving her from dual blades to a double blade. With each of those being curved in a different direction, it provides a subtly unique angle of attack. And the fact that Obi-Wan can handle this effortlessly, and we can almost be certain he had no experience against this exact type of saber. It just points towards my idea that Kenobi should really be held up there with Yoda and Mace Windu when people talk about the best swordsman in the Order. Because he slashes right through this contraption, even catching her dual blades and using the momentum to fling one out of her hand over the catwalk. Her wristband turns green, showing that her ride was here, and she leaps over the edge to catch a vulture droid out of there. In her next call to Dooku, she lies in Jabba's presence, saying Skywalker already killed the boy, and implies that he was on his way to Tatooine to kill Papa Hutt next.
Skywalker had already killed him.
Ventress is lucky that Dooku failed to stop him, so she wasn't the only one to blame, and the Jedi do return the child while Padme reveals the plot to zero. With Rhoda safely in his father's arms, the Republic did secure a major strategic victory, with navigation through Hutt space being crucial in removing some of the CIS advantages in the Outer Rim. Now we see Ventress on Ragosa trying to make King Katunko an ally, with the CIS wanting to build a strategic supply depot on his world of Toydaria. The king was only planning to meet with Yoda, but when Dooku learned of this pending talk, he sent his Dark Acolyte. To make it seem like the Jedi had abandoned him, she put in place a comms block maintained by a blockade with Munificent-class frigates. When Yoda did arrive, they were able to destroy his ship, but Yoda and a trio of loyal clones made it out on escape pods and crashed down on the moon's surface. Ventress is able to use this defeat to imply that for the sake of his people, he should have a strong ally, and they agree on a challenge to see if Yoda is as capable as he claimed. Of course, she had no plans on playing fair. The Jedi and just 3 clones would be faced with hundreds of droids and even AATs, and when a distant smoke cloud seemed to signal their death, a callback to the king showed the Toydarian was relieved to see Yoda lived. Fuming, she crushes his calm, and eventually the king snaps as well, rebuking Dooku for the behavior of his representative. And the Count's response was plainly to tell her to kill the king. As her blades come down towards his head, they were stopped by the little green Jedi. With a mere gesture, Yoda sent Ventress flying backwards, mocking her dependence on the dark side. He effortlessly took her lightsabers, playfully proposing her surrender. But showing his compassion, being the opposite to her in every way. Where she didn't play fair, he even gives her sabers back. She responds by setting off explosives that take down a nearby cliff, distracting them so she could escape via her Punwarko 116 class sloop. Dooku felt personally insulted by the king and vowed that one day he would have his revenge. Though she was now on a string of losses, Dooku did understand that she was going up against the most capable Jedi in the Order, and she and General Grievous would be entrusted with the most complex military operation yet. The attack on Camino, hoping to cut off the supply of troopers, was a mission whose significance was obvious to the entire galaxy. But it's also why there was such a robust communication network and warning system in place. And while this operation was being carried out, she was on Camino taking a single stealth-enabled ship for deep reconnaissance. But when they got word that the droids that took over the outpost had been discovered, and the resulting battle led to the destruction of the comm tower, which just receiving no signal was itself treated as an attack warning, the Separatists had lost their element of surprise and had to wait to strike another day. This was followed by the destruction of Skytop Station and the capture of Nute Gunray. The Neimoidian was one of the most well-informed beings in the galaxy, and in an odd way, he knew more about Darth Sidious than anyone besides Dooku, having been in contact with the Lord for decades. If some of those Republic torture specialists got their hands on him, they might be able to reveal something that could lead to the Sith's secret identity. Ventress would lead the assault on the Venator-class Star Destroyer Tranquility, which was on its way to Coruscant. Her manipulation expertise had previously been focused on Republic Senate Commando Pharaoh Argus, who was leading the security detail escort. The first stage of the attack was to have Droach-class boarding ships pierce through the Venator's hull and insert dozens of battle droids. The Dark Acolyte would use the chaos to slip in undetected, but didn't pass up an opportunity to indulge in the terror of the final moments of the last trooper. Moving through the ventilation shafts, she spread thermal detonators across the engine room, even getting past the surprisingly diligent 327T Treadwell droid. Finally, she descended on the detention center, as the clones were mopping up the droids and feeling like they ended this threat. Dropping through the ceiling, swift kicks knocked out the commandos at the controls, and she is met by Ahsoka, who is showing exactly why she was paired with Skywalker. Recognizing her own trait of overconfidence in this girl, she used it against Ahsoka by avoiding attacks, only to draw her near the cell and then used her momentum to trap the Padawan, while Newt steps out and locks her in. But Luminara and Dooley had arrived and quickly freeze Tano, and just like with Annie and Obi, she feigns to surrender when pinned between these Jedi blades. It was only to stall for a few seconds to allow her detonators to go off, and in the shock she force pushes herself an opening, rushes to the elevator, and uses her blades as brakes to slow her descent. She would lead Unduli to the underbelly of the engine room, striking a pipe that releases searing gas into the Jedi's face. Her eye burning with pain, Luminara is still able to insult the assassin.
I recognize the fighting style of Count Dooku. Your version is unrefined, amateurish, sloppy.
The rage fueled her true self. The Banshee whipped around in a blur of red blades, moving the Jedi to the precipice, and a powerful dropkick sent her off. Then with a slash to the pipeworks above, Unduli was trapped in the pile. Just as she was about to deliver the killing blow, Ahsoka arrived with a force push of her own, and Ventress was sent back. The Dark Acolyte was eager to end this pest, but was unable to put them down quickly. Keeping that internal timer running throughout this battle, she knows that she has to get moving, and tosses more explosives as she slips away. Argus gets the signal, and in a flash he slaughters the other guards. He's able to get Newt onto a consular class. Ventress stalls a bit more, then finally makes her way to an escape pod to rendezvous with the consular. But when the cocky traitor acts like this was his achievement, Ventress makes sure that he is the final death of this operation. Though it wasn't long before she ran into Unduli again. On the icy world of Alzok 3, she is again bested by a Jedi duo, when Unduli and Sakura are able to trap her in an ice cave by collapsing the entrance. From here it was off to the Halcyon Star Cruiser to ensure the Lanik Senator Zast Travak carried out his plans to defect to the Separatists. Using her Genevex, she secretly slipped into the vessel, and when he started to have second thoughts, he got a saber through his spine. Always one to have an escape route pre-planned. With a call to her ship, it's in position, and she smashes through the windows into the void of space, with her characteristically chaotic exit. Then again, we see her skills are needed on an ice world. This time it was Korm, where the details are sparse but tell us that the plot was foiled by Plo Koon and Commander Wolf. When they tried to pin her, her acrobatic escape resulted in a parting slash to the clone's head. He didn't die, but the blade vaporized the plastoid, skin, eye, and some bone as she raced away, and he would forever bear this scar. By now, the CIS military command believed it was time to relaunch their invasion of Camino. The plan would be to make it seem like the Separatists were relying on brute force to smash through the Republic flotilla, with Grievous heading a massive fleet. But the true threat lay in wait below the ocean surface. Using her earlier recon, they were able to secretly slip a Trident-class ship through, and with an array of AQ series droids working as engineers. Exterior sections of the capital ship in orbit were filled with parts of the larger Tridents, and the attack was used as a delivery system. As the Republic ignored the falling debris, Ventress and her team went to work quickly reassembling these units. Ventress had studied the blueprints of Taipoka City, and she knew exactly where to strike, the chamber housing the clone DNA templates. Kenobi was the only one to sense something was off with the superficial appearance of the CIS invasion, and investigated the area where most of the debris was concentrating. Seeing the finalized drilling assault craft just moments before they burst through the surface, the platforms were taken by storm, thousands of clones were killed in their artificial wombs, and dozens were falling to the blaster fire from aqua droids stomping across their homeworld. In the rush to address this threat, it provided an opening for Grievous and another wave of forces to land, and as they pressed through the halls, they crossed paths with Ventress. ARC Trooper Colt had been able to hold off Grievous, but with a mere gesture, Ventress gets him in a force choke and kills him in such a cold manner that even the general was impressed. Once inside the DNA sanctum, she quickly secured the coveted genetic material of Jango Fett, the very blueprint for the entire Republic clone army. But Skywalker cuts her off. And in this fight, neither get the upper hand, but she knows time is her enemy. The clones had turned the tide and would soon turn on her. As she got to the end of the landing pad, Skywalker calls deep on the Force to knock her down and pull the DNA canister to him. But calling on the dark side, she is able to overwhelm him and the canister goes flying right into the hands of a clone, preserving his and all his brother's genome. She was surrounded but confident, knowing that Grievous was approaching via Camino and flight pod, and they would make it out alive, but as failures for a second time, coming away with nothing to show for all of this planning and resources lost. In response to these failures, she was passionately diving deeper into the Sith arts, working physically and metaphysically to understand how to better wield the dark side. Ironically, this is what would finally put an end to her life as a Sith acolyte. Sidious could sense her growing power and knew she could not remain as a weapon in Dooku's arsenal. At this time, she was leading the charge in the space battle of Sullust, delivering significant damage to Yularen's flagship. She does eventually get shot down by Kenobi and Anakin, crash landing into the hangar of a Providence class, while Dooku was being berated by Sidious, who angrily gave the order to kill Ventress.
She's my most trusted.
I said, eliminate her!
She calls Dooku to ask for more support, but he coldly abandons her.
You are no longer my apprentice.
And while the Jedi were on her tail, seconds later she's in a duel for her life, making sure to use tactical retreats to negate their advantage and fight one-on-one. But when she is force-pushed into her own ship and seems pinned, like a wild animal she unleashes all her hate. Her past of constant betrayals and this anger gives her enough power to force choke two of the greatest Jedi in the galaxy. They are held up for what may only be seconds, but this is an eternity if you realize just how hard this is to achieve. There is a reason Force wielders cannot just end all fights like this, and shows how deep her pain was. Alchemically converted through the dark side into raw power. It was only the barrage from the Requisite class that knocks them free. They take this advantage and push her, an exhausted acolyte, to the point that she loses a blade, and this time a damaged hyena bomber puts an end to the fighting. Exploding in the hangar, both Jedi and assassin just hope to flee, as the capital ship barrage continues. She pushes her damaged craft, barely scraping free before the Providence erupts in a massive explosion. Long after the fighting came to an end, the battered remnants of Ventress's vessel, along with her seemingly lifeless body, were eventually stumbled upon by the Raider, a salvage ship whose crew was well practiced in sifting through the remnants of space battles. Her Fanblade starfighter, which was considered a rare and valuable find, was quickly hoisted aboard as a trophy, and they extracted the semi-conscious Ventress, intrigued by this lone survivor of such a massive battle. When she came to, she tried ordering this motley crew to take her to Dathomir, and when they laughed at her boldness, she effortlessly closed their throats and let them writhe on the floor as their consciousness faded into oblivion. Aboard of all things a dusty old scrapper ship, this once warlord, Dark Acolyte assassin, a supreme leader in the CIS, with vendettas against everyone from pirate gangs to the Jedi Order, thinking back on this long, bloody, and pointless history, she was again battered and alone. She decided to give it all up and return to her homeworld, and just as she touched down, she was met by weapon-wielding Nightsisters, but Mother Talzin quickly intervened. She recognized in Ventress the echo of a child she had parted with many moons ago. As Ventress's strength waned, a culmination of her injuries and the weight of her past, she crumbled, finding sanctuary in Talzin's outstretched arms. Her kin realized their mistake and rushed to her aid. Within the dimly lit recesses of the village, Ventress's fragile form was laid upon an ancient stone altar. Under the guiding hand of Mother Talzin, the Nightsisters assembled, bringing forth vessels filled with the water of life, a mystical concoction that pulsed with Dathomir's unique magic. Engaged in a sacred chant, Talzin spearheaded a ritualistic healing ceremony. The powerful incantation drew forth haunting memories from the depths of Ventress's psyche, memories of love, betrayal, and abandonment. As her past surged through her, the searing betrayal by Dooku overshadowed all else, fanning the flames of her desire for vengeance. Though we must be suspicious of this change, from a resigned Ventress to one who is now passionately wanting revenge, through a ceremony in which Talzin orchestrated. These visions channel her lifetime of abandonment into a rage focusing solely on Dooku, the one Talzin knows to be the Sith apprentice to Sidious, who betrayed her all those years ago. Ventress holds no bitterness over being given up by Talzin, and we would see just how adept these sisters are at mind control. So of course, Talzin would be the most powerful at this. Seeming to be helping in Ventress's want for revenge, she is quick to offer up Nightsisters Karis and Aleth, and develop the plan of using a drug on Dooku to take a magical spirit form. In this phantom camouflage, they would use Jedi lightsabers when it was time to strike. In the event that they failed, it would frame the Jedi as attackers. Using her intimate knowledge of the palace on Sereno, they are able to hit the Count with the dart, jolting him awake from his sleep, and launching him into a battle where he is fighting off 3 Nightsisters and this mind-altering drug. You might wonder why they didn't just poison him, but they very well might have. The effect we are seeing could be due to his Sith abilities to fight off the poison as much as possible, something we saw a lot more with the Old Republic era Sith. He uses his environment perfectly, circling around to reduce their numbers by moving through the hall, but one does have the skills to leap over him, though only to be kicked down into his throne room. In this large, open room, he is surrounded and faces off against Ventress. But after this lengthy fight, the poison and trio of Nightsisters seem to have drained him. As he stumbles, Ventress force pushes him into the same desk from which the order to have her executed was once given. Basking in this moment, she steps forward to finish him off, only to have Dooku erupt with force lightning, launching them up into the air and out through the grand window. She is able to catch herself and uses the force to save her sisters from falling to their death. When they return to Dathomir, Talzin is suspiciously unsurprised by this, and reassures her that this will lead Dooku into the next part of this trap, as if she suspected that their assassination attempt would not be successful, and that its goal was always to scare the Count into seeking out a new apprentice. Dooku still believes Ventress died over Sullust, and is not suspicious when the Night Mother contacts him with an offer of a new apprentice. He hopes this could mean the Coven was open to joining the CIS.
I believe the old alliance can again be what it once was.
But she says that this offer was just to clear her debt to him for the help he gave all those years ago. She later explains that he could have a Night Brother sibling of the infamous Darth Maul, to a man who hoped to topple Sidious. It's almost like a status symbol to make him feel like he was at the same level, or even surpassing his lord by having the stronger, younger version of his old apprentice. Ventress would carry out the ritual of selection, in which Chieftain Viscus gathered all the fighting age brothers into the center of their rustic village. This was an ancient tradition, and all the men knew to fall in line and wait with fearful deference to the sister, while this would also serve as a rite of passage for Ventress, embracing her own tradition, a step toward becoming a full Night Sister. Many were beaten and cast aside, but a group of 6 are chosen for the test of fury, including Maul's 2 biological brothers, Savage Opress and Farrell. She would be left unarmed while the brothers all wielded a wide array of deadly weapons. As she quickly neutralizes them, Savage does get an opportunity to strike back, but moves instead to help his brother. Moving on to the next test, called the Challenge of Blindness, which allowed her to use the Knight as her ally. 2 were quickly killed, but Savage predicts her next move and pulls Farrell to safety. The third and final test would have them battling across randomly moving pillars, and the brothers tried to work their best to help each other out. But Farrell was separated and pounced on. In his rage, Savage is able to land several blows but is eventually bested, finding himself beaten down and under the boot of a Night Sister like countless generations before him. His deal is rewarded, and Farrell is left alive while he is taken as slave. Talzin is thoroughly impressed with this physical specimen, and with the magic's ritual, they take him from a formidable warrior to a true beast. When he awakens, his rage bursts through as he grabs Ventress by the neck. As she struggles, the mother calmly tells her that he will follow her every order.
Let me go.
And seconds later, Savage would be put to the final test as Farrell was dragged before them and dropped at his brother's feet. Ventress slaps him and orders him to do it. After a pause, he does lift Farrell up by the neck and stares into his brother's eyes, watching the light fade away. Moments later, he is shuttled to Sereno and Dooku receives his new disciple. The Sith was all smiles, eager to put this new weapon to good use, and his first mission would see the death of several clones, a Jedi Master, and young Padawan. This attack sent horror into the hearts of the Jedi leadership, who immediately rushed to Dathomir to learn more of this horned enemy. Eventually, Kenobi and Skywalker are being hosted by Talzin, who uses her magics to show them that Savage is on Toydaria. When they leave, Ventress says that they might not be ready to take Dooku, but the mother pushes and says this was the only chance they had. By now, the Jedi had caught the beast in the act of capturing King Katunko. Dooku wanted to see if Savage could succeed where Ventress had failed. The instructions were clear, to capture the king alive. But in the battle with the Jedi, they pile on the Zabrak, and as the king tries to fly away, Savage calls on the Force to snap his neck. His own Force abilities were likely always there, and we know that Force powers are highly heritable traits, so being brothers with Maul likely points to it just running in the family. But something that should be explored more is if the Night Sister magic can in some way instill, or at least amplify one's powers in the Force, as the green ichor itself is through the old Zepho manipulation of the dark side. When Savage tosses the lifeless body of the king before Dooku, his master loses it and beats him down with bolts of Force lightning. As he is writhing on the floor, Ventress steps in and uses her magics to take control of her weapon. Just like the gladiator pit Dooku discovered her in years ago, these three were now engaged in a dazzling fight with dual and double blades, force pushes, and lightning. Dooku even loses his saber for a moment and has to rely on his athletic ability. At 82 years old, but with the dark side running through every midichlorian in his body. He pulls his saber to him and calls on more lightning to keep Savage out of the fight. Ventress snaps at her beast.
Kill him! Kill him, you fool!
I can't! He's too powerful!
Your weakness will not be my downfall!
And after all this physical and verbal abuse from these two masters, through his rage, the chains of magic were broken. Like Ventress at the time of her abandonment and darkest hour, he calls on the Force to choke them both into the air. In this brief flash of fury, Ventress and Dooku were desperately just trying to survive. At the first chance he got, the Count flees. Ventress slips in behind him, closing the hatch and leaving Savage to deal with the Jedi that had followed him from Toydaria. She finally catches up to him and she pulls on every skill she had learned. Jedi, warlord, gladiator, acolyte, night sister. A whole life of fighting was poured into this moment, but Dooku was simply too powerful. He is able to rip the sabers out of her hands, pin her, and strike her with lightning. Collapsing on the ground, her life flashed before her as he arrogantly approached, ready to deliver the killing blow. As it came down, a flashback to the night of the ambush. And just as Dooku feigned defeat, she waited until the last second to redirect his saber into the pipeworks. Just like her attack on Unduli, the searing steam stunned him long enough to let her slip away. As she flew through space, she thought about the point of it all. She spent a period bounty hunting to keep herself alive, and stayed far away from anything connected to the Jedi, Sith, and even her homeworld. But eventually she felt the call to return to Mother Talzin. Descending in her sleek HH-87 Starhopper, when she does speak with the Mother, Ventress says that she had given up on vengeance and wanted simplicity. Talzin makes it seem like she is embracing this lost child, and says she should fully commit to the Coven and live out her days with her sisters. But there was an ulterior motive here, as Talzin had been working with Savage to try and find Maul, and knew that this trio of warriors could lead to the greatest era of Night Sister rule, as the Mother herself had never given up her want for revenge on Sidious. Ventress would undergo the dark baptism in the ichor-infused black waters. Together they alter her in a way that is similar to the process seen with Savage, but without the monstrous alterations to the body.
You are now reborn, a sister of the night.
The entire Coven would start the night celebrations, and while they partied, Dooku had ordered Grievous to mobilize a massive fleet to put an end to the Night Sister threat once and for all. The old cyborg saw this as an excellent end to their bitter rivalry. While most were lost in their bruise, her attention snapped to the sky, picking up the approaching bombers. Tri-fighter fire and explosives pummeled the ancient edifice, and debris rained down, killing Sister Karis. Talzin puts up a protective bubble, Ventress ignites her sabers and rushes to lead the defense, while bows rip through the first droids. It seemed like the droids stood no match until the defoliator tanks arrived. They spread fires that rapidly expanded, burning away anything in their path, turning sisters into ash and leaving the droid bodies unharmed. All while Talzin was calling on her secret weapon. Old Daka, hidden away in a cloaked chamber, started the ritual that would reanimate the corpses of long-dead sisters. This helped to overwhelm a group of tanks, and Ventress commandeers one, turning the momentum in favor of the sisters. She heads for the main landing craft and is met by General Grievous. Playing on the scraps of the honorable Kaleesh warriors still kept alive in that artificial body, she gets him to agree to a duel. The winner keeps the world without any further bloodshed. But as soon as he got a strike to one of his arms, she lifted her blades to finish him, and he took a page from her book. Unburdened by honor, he calls on the droids to open fire. She took a bolt to the shoulder, while the undead horde rushed to engage. A sister named Luce helps shuttle her away, but takes a fatal bolt to the back. And the sister's dying words encouraged Ventress to survive. The droids mopped up the rest of the forces, while Grievous had pierced the witch's sanctum and put an inglorious end to old Daka. Showing her full mastery of this unique, dark side-fueled magic, Talzin fades into a green mist, narrowly evading the general's blades, and while Ventress was racked with guilt, her Night Mother appeared to her, with no feelings of anger or shame, just encouragement.
You have your own path to follow now.
In all this time, all this struggle, she was again alone. A shattered Ventress would hide out in the woods until the Separatist forces left. Utterly defeated, she had no idea how to honor the Mother's words, or the memory of her fallen sisters. And so to retreat from the galaxy, she set a course for Tatooine, and set down on one of the most remote and lawless cities she knew of, Mos Eisley, a story that we will continue in part 2, the final part of the complete canon life of Ventress. Please hit that like button, it's the best way to help me out. Leave a comment and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Check out the descriptions for cool stuff and ways to support us, but most important of all, remember, live by the dark side and you'll die by the dark side, and the Force will be with you, always.